But let's talk about the storm that's engulfing the Conservative Party, because political commentators like me, we get paid quite a lot of money to give our expertise on what's about to happen. I don't think anybody predicted what would happen today, did they? And I wonder what your conclusion is from the fact that James Cleverly has been knocked out of the Conservative Party leadership race. Was it cock-up? Was it conspiracy? Was it stupidity? I suspect it was certainly a bit of a cock-up, and it was a bit stupid. And the Conservative Party, who was it called, the Conservative Party? The stupid party. The Conservative Parliamentary Party has also been called the most duplicitous electorate in the world. It's also been called the most sophisticated electorate in the world. I'm not quite sure what led to it being called that. But today, they did something which nobody really thought they would do. They ejected the leading candidate in the race, James Cleverly. He only got 37 votes. Robert Jenrick got 40 and Kemi Badenoch got 41. So the top two go through to the membership round. Now, everyone was surprised by that because yesterday, James Cleverly went up from 21 to 39. So people are scratching their heads to think, well, what on earth has happened? Well, Aggie Chambray, LBC's political correspondent, is here to tell us. Aggie.
Well, I think this is an extraordinary moment, and we sat here last night and predicted quite confidently that James Cleverly would sail through, not just because he was miles ahead and he was 8 votes ahead of the next candidate, but also because we assumed, wrongly, it turns out, that Tom Tugendhat's, a lot of his 20 votes, he was ejected yesterday, a lot of those votes would go to James Cleverly, but no. So today he's ejected. He actually not only is ejected, he went down from yesterday's figures despite the fact that there were 20 votes up for grabs. What happened? Well, I think there are a few different things happening. Number one, I think although we understand there was a diktat from Team Cleverly not to vote share because there were so few MPs, there are 121 MPs, only 120 actually voting. We think that a few MPs might have thought, hang on, Kemi Badenoch is favourite among the members. That's what it looks like on the polls. So Robert Jenrick is an easier person to beat. So perhaps they switched their votes to Robert Jenrick, took them away from James Cleverly, and indeed that might have been what done it. But other people are suggesting that Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick were really, really worried after yesterday and both spent like the last 24 hours on the phone meeting MPs, trying really, really hard. And James Cleverly slightly relaxed. You know, we saw them last night. They seemed very, very confident, and perhaps that played into it too.
He went to Boris Johnson's book launch.
He went to Boris Johnson's book launch.
Which there would have been other MPs at, I guess.
Indeed. But perhaps the others were putting a lot more work in. And, you know, we know one thing about Tory MPs, they're a fickle bunch. But I was speaking to someone in Number 10 earlier who said that when the news came through about James Cleverly, they all thought, it's absolutely brilliant for us. So I think that kind of shows you where the Labour Party...
Do you think that they really think that? Because I'm never quite sure whether to believe, or you see it on Twitter a lot, Labour people saying, well, of course, we want X to win because they'll be better for us. And I'm never quite sure when you hear these things from Number 10 when they say, well, of course, we think it's great that we've got Badenoch or Jenrick rather than Cleverly. I don't know whether to believe that or not.
Well, I think James Cleverly is closer, his politics are closer to Keir Starmer than they are to Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. So I wonder whether part of it is they feel that they have more territory, they've got more of the centre ground if they are now defending themselves against a Robert Jenrick or a Kemi Badenoch who are on the right of the Tory party, especially compared to James Cleverly. But I think the race is going to get pretty nasty now with just the two of them fighting it out. There are already suggestions that Robert Jenrick is up for many, many debates between the two of them. But I think this is genuinely an extraordinary upset in a contest that has had a number of surprises up to this point.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how much media they do, because they only have one aim at the moment, and that is to persuade Tory party members to vote for them. It's a bit pointless doing sort of a lot of media in a sense, because you can't target that as well. You've got to just target the members, and they've got a comparatively short time to do this, haven't they?
Yeah, they haven't got long. It's a matter of weeks now before the polls open. But I think there are a few different ways to target, right? And media is still one of them. They are still targeting, especially, GB News. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to talk about GB News on LBC.
You'll soon find out.
GB News has kind of the most amount of Tory viewers compared to other channels. So perhaps something like that, if they were keen to do. I mean, LBC, I know we get a lot of Tory member viewers as well.
The bid's already in, Aggie.
The bid's already in. But there are different, they will obviously want to do different things. But I think media is one of the things that they will do. Hustings, I'm sure they will be doing. And we know that they're going to do at least one debate, but perhaps they'll do more.
OK, Aggie Shornbury, thank you very much indeed. I'm joined now by Tom Skinner, founding partner of the public relations agency Nexus. He was on Cross Question last week, but the reason he's here is because he was a senior advisor to James Cleverly's campaign and played quite a role in what happened at the conference. Tom, obviously you must be quite devastated by what's happened today.
Yeah, it's certainly a shock. You asked at the start of the show whether it was cock-up or conspiracy, and to be honest, it's an almighty cock-up. So yeah, everyone's shocked. And
on the part of whom?
Well, look, one of the problems with politics is that everyone in politics thinks they're very clever, and they all think they're cleverer than everybody else. And what I suspect happened, as Aggie said, is that too many people went in there trying to vote for the person who they thought would knock out the person they didn't like. There were so many MPs who were anyone but Rob or anyone but Kemi, which was their main primary motivating factor, actually. And what we saw tonight is they thought they'd go in, one vote's not going to make a difference, one vote here is not going to make a difference. And actually what it's meant is that en masse, say there was half a dozen of those in each camp. It's sadly, from my point of view, done for James, but good luck to Rob and Kemi. They can go off now and fight it out.
What does he do now?
Well, for this evening, I suspect lick his wounds, spend some more time with his wife. He's had quite a difficult, busy few years, going from party chairman to education secretary, foreign secretary, home secretary, general election, leadership campaign. I mean, it's been quite a roller coaster for him and his family. So take some time, I would hope, and go and spend some time with them.
And what about the two remaining candidates? Because Conservative Party enemies will say, well, they're two head-banging right-wingers. What's the choice? It's sort of the choice between Pinky and Perky.
Yeah.
They don't agree on everything, it has to be said. You look at their positions on leaving the ECHR, for example. They've got quite different positions on that. But what does each of them have to do to convince Tory party members that they are the ones who can take the fight to Labour?
Yeah, well, what we've seen, particularly last night when everyone sort of thought that it was a fight between Rob and Kemi to stay in, is the brutal briefing from both campaigns. And what I hope doesn't happen is that we now have 3 or 4 weeks of just both of them taking lumps out of each other. What they actually have to do is show that they can be not just win this competition, but also the leader of the opposition, and then people need to see them as the Prime Minister. And I think Conservative Party voters will be looking for, yes, someone that feels good, someone that sort of tickles their belly on some policy issues, but actually they want someone to be a leader and to take the fight to Labour, because if there's one thing that Conservative Party members do agree on, it's that they want to see an end as fast as possible to the Labour government. So I hope that that's what unites them in.
Perhaps they shouldn't have voted for Liz Truss in the first place.
Well, you might say that.
Well, see, the problem is that a lot of journalists are now characterising the Tory party membership as again, head-banging right-wingers. Now, you know them probably better than I do, given what you've been doing for the last few years. There are a few in there. There are some in there. You're absolutely right. But there are plenty who are not. Yeah. And I would have thought, if Robert Jenrick wants to win this, he's got to somehow appeal to them in a way that maybe Kemi Badenoch might find it more difficult to. I don't know. Yeah,
that's certainly what I would advise them to do, is sort of look at where the bulk of sensible sort of mainstream public are, but also party members. My fear is that this campaign up to now has sort of shown that the more right-wing you can be, the more likely you are to make it to the final. So perhaps their tactic might be to double down and just keep becoming more right-wing. I would say that was a fool's errand, and will end up in tears. Whether they win or not is a big problem. And I hope that through this campaign, neither of them, my strong advice would be neither of them make any hostages to fortune and pledge something which is completely unrealistic, or they have to row back on relatively swiftly when they're leader of the opposition or Prime Minister.
Natasha Clark, my colleague, was saying earlier that she thought that the difference between the two was Robert Jenrick was quite heavy on policy and Kemi's more heavy on vibes. And I can kind of see what she means by that. Do you think Kemi has got to be more policy intensive and Rob Jenrick has got to be more vibes intensive?
Well, I actually think it's too early in the competition to be too policy focused. We were booted out relatively spectacularly not that long ago. So coming up with new policies for the country now is is not the right approach. There's a long time before we go to the proper wider electorate. So I hope that they'll take time and actually come up with some sensible policies over time that can build an electoral coalition that can take the fight to Labour, rather than building a coalition now that just looks at the Conservative Party membership.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. Now, that's Tom Skinner, by the way, former advisor to James Cleverly's campaign.